Usually an architectural blueprint implies precision.
Right.
You look at the schematics, the load-bearing walls are clearly drawn, the dimensions of the rooms are exact, and, well, the contractor just points and says, there it is. That's how he built it. It's totally binary.
Yeah, it's mathematically sound. I mean, we naturally gravitate toward that kind of visible, perfectly categorized structure. We want to know what holds the roof up.
Exactly. But today, for this deep dive, we're looking at a blueprint for the human soul.
Wow. Okay.
And what is so incredibly compelling about this particular structural plan is the intense contradiction at its core. Welcome to the deep dive, everyone. Today we're digging into a fascinating, highly specific spiritual manifesto from August 16, 2006.
All right, the 2006 text.
Yeah, it's titled I Am a Chanyuan Celestial, and it's authored by Shofeno, Tongshan Celestial, and Sidai Celestial.
Right.
And this document claims that you, the believer, are this immortal cosmic being on a divine monumental mission to save humanity.
Which is a massive claim.
It is. But then your primary instructions for executing this cosmic mission are basically to wash your hands, go to work, and, not bother the local government.
It's just a remarkable piece of ideological architecture. So our approach today is to look at this 2006 manifesto completely impartially.
Right.
We really want to understand the nuts and bolts of the Lifechanyuan movement directly from their own text. We're going to look at what a Chanyuan celestial claims to be, how they're instructed to live, and finally, the highly detailed cosmic reward they're striving for.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because the identity they build here is wild. Can you start by defining exactly what a Chanyuan celestial actually is?
Yeah.
And, what is their core mission on Earth supposed to be?
Well, the text doesn't start small, that's for sure.
Yeah.
It basically frames a Chanyuan celestial as a being who has literally descended to the human world from a heavenly kingdom.
So they're aliens or angels.
Kind of like cosmic agents. The author is establishing that their true citizenship is not of this earth. They're positioning themselves as visitors, deployed into a foreign environment with a highly specific assignment.
Which is what
To
exactly?
help a figure they refer to as the guide. And they are supposed to help this guide to, quote, reap ripe crops.
Reap ripe crops.
Yeah.
That phrasing is so evocative.
Yeah.
I mean, it implies that a specific segment of humanity has reached a state of maturity, right?
Exactly. They are ready for a harvest.
Well, the rest of the field is just, I guess, left behind.
Right. And that harvest is the precursor to building what the text calls the Lifechanyuan era.
Okay.
The whole goal is to moralize humankind. They want to instill this universal respect for the greatest creator, for life, which they always capitalize, by the way, and for nature.
Interesting.
But the mechanism they describe for this transition is what's really fascinating. They state their goal is to guide humanity away from the Egypt of soul.
The Egypt of soul. That specific phrase just completely stops you in your tracks.
It really does.
Because borrowing from the biblical narrative of Exodus, the Israelites escaping physical bondage in Egypt, that's a pretty common rhetorical tool.
Right. We see it all the time.
But by psychologizing it, making it the Egypt of soul, they take this historical concept of literal slavery and turn it into an invisible internal state of being.
Yeah, it's a brilliant rhetorical mechanism, actually.
Because it makes the enemy internal. The text is essentially arguing that humanity's default state right now is spiritual imprisonment.
And if the bondage is psychological, then the escape route has to be psychological, too. The Lifechanyuan era is presented as the promised land to cure this internal bondage.
So what does that promised land look like?
Well, they provide this very vivid, highly traditional, utopian blueprint for what the era will look like on Earth.
Right. It reads like this nostalgic dream of ultimate social harmony. Like they describe an era where the worthy person can fully utilize his talents and the whole world is like one family.
Which is a beautiful sentiment.
Yeah. But then they get into the granular details. They say things like, no one will keep lost articles found on the roadside, and the houses need not be bolted at night.
Which are the ultimate markers of a high-trust society.
Completely.
It's about the removal of all interpersonal friction. No theft, no fear, absolute security.
Here is where the text presents a massive inherent tension. And I really want to unpack how a believer reconciles this.
Okay, yeah.
The author goes to extreme lengths to project this posture of total subservience. They write, I am a Chanyuan celestial, humble and insignificant in power. And they say, I am never arrogant and conceited.
Right, which is a pretty standard declaration of ego death in a lot of spiritual traditions.
Yes. But then, in the exact same breath, they claim to possess a, quote, perfect soul and morality. And they unequivocally state, I am one of the most civilized and well-bred men of mankind.
Yeah, that is quite the pivot.
Right. Claiming you have absolute moral perfection and are the most civilized human on the planet is, by definition, a fundamentally arrogant statement. So how does this ideological framework support those two wildly opposing concepts without just collapsing?
Well, it works because they completely redefine the source of that perfection.
How so?
In their framework, the individual ego really is insignificant. Their personal power is zero. But because they have completely surrendered to the way of the greatest creator, they become a flawless conduit for divine will.
Oh, I see.
So their perfection isn't a boast about their personality. It's a statement of factual alignment with the universe.
It's like the logic of a perfectly machined component.
Exactly.
Like a single gear in a watch is entirely insignificant on its own. But if it is machined without a single flaw, it can claim perfection because it flawlessly executes the design of the watchmaker.
That is a great way to put it. The perfection belongs to the system, and they are just proud to be fully integrated into that system.
Yeah.
And this paradox, being a perfect cosmic being who is simultaneously totally humble, it becomes the foundation for their daily rules. Because when you read how a Chanyuan celestial is supposed to spend their Tuesday afternoon, it is shockingly grounded.
Shockingly mundane.
Yeah.
I mean, you read the opening lines about descending from a heavenly kingdom,
Yeah.
and you naturally expect the rules to involve, I don't know, hours of esoteric chanting or isolating yourself on a mountain.
Right, or talking to stars.
Exactly. But instead, the daily code of conduct is aggressively earthly. The text mandates that a celestial must be hardworking and committed to their job.
They have to advocate for social morality.
Yes, and they explicitly state they, quote, practice hygiene, value facts, believe in science.
The inclusion of hygiene and science is highly intentional there.
It really is. It's like, you are a cosmic being, but please remember to floss.
Yeah, wash your hands.
It's so pragmatic. And this pragmatism extends right into their societal footprint, too. The text emphasizes that they love the hometown that raised them. They conscientiously raise their children. They love their spouse.
From a sociological standpoint, this is basically a mechanism for minimizing external friction.
Definitely.
The text explicitly outlines a completely non-combative political stance. They say, I do not oppose the government, I do not harbor animosity to anyone, they don't restrict anyone's freedom, and they don't let theirs be restricted either.
Which creates the ultimate low-profile citizen.
Exactly.
I mean, if your ultimate goal is a cosmic harvest and preparing for an eternal afterlife, drawing the ire of the local tax authority or starting a political revolution is just a distraction.
It drags you right back into the Egypt of soul.
Right. So it functions as this camouflage of normalcy.
Yeah.
By being hygienic, hardworking, and respectful of the government, the believer becomes unimpeachable to the outside world.
Society looks at them and just sees a model citizen. They are entirely unaware of the sweeping cosmic narrative operating underneath.
But the narrative underneath is where the cognitive load seems almost unbearable to me.
How do you mean?
Because the text doesn't just ask them to balance mundane citizenship with cosmic origins. It asks them to balance a staggering array of historically conflicting religious figures.
Ah, yes. The syncretism.
Yeah. The manifesto states that they follow the way of the greatest creator, but under that massive umbrella, they explicitly integrate the teachings of Jesus Christ, Buddha Sakyamuni, the Prophet Muhammad, and the celestial Lao Tzu.
It's a textbook, highly ambitious example of religious syncretism.
It's huge.
They are actively trying to synthesize the foundational figures of Christianity, Buddhism, Islam, and Taoism into a single unified theory of spiritual reality.
Which is an incredible tightrope walk. You have the demand to value facts and believe in science sitting on the exact same shelf as a belief in miracles, spiritual perception, and the combined theological weight of the world's major prophets.
It's a lot to hold in your head at once.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. How does a movement prevent this from just devolving into ideological chaos? If you try to simultaneously apply the teachings of Jesus, Buddha, and the modern scientific method to a single problem, you are going to hit contradictions.
Well, you hit contradictions unless you introduce a hierarchy of truth.
Okay, explain that.
Syncretism is incredibly effective for new religious movements because it drastically lowers the barrier to entry. If you're recruiting a Christian, a Buddhist, or a science enthusiast, you don't tell them their worldview is wrong, you just tell them their worldview is incomplete.
Oh, wow. So you say Jesus was right and science is right, but they are just lower-level manifestations of the greatest creator's ultimate physics.
Exactly. The Lifechanyuan text is basically claiming to hold the master key that translates all these localized truths into one universal language.
That is fascinating.
But to your point about preventing chaos and how they keep believers from questioning those contradictions, they do it by installing a rigorous, almost punishing system of internal self-regulation.
This is the inner court concept, right?
Yes, the inner court.
The internal architecture described here is so intense. The text says the believer possesses a court in my soul, and its sole function is to constantly judge sincerity versus falsity, kindness versus evil, and beauty versus ugliness.
The tone shifts drastically here.
It really does. It goes from that gentle, love your hometown rhetoric to describing a state of constant introspection, self-trial, and self-check.
And they use some pretty severe language.
It's genuinely chilling. They say they actively imprison or confine themselves. They state, I never indulge myself or be too tolerant to myself. They say they would prefer to suffer rather than go against their conscience.
It basically requires a believer to become their own most ruthless prosecutor, judge, and jailer.
It makes me think of an autoimmune disorder, but for the soul.
Oh, that's an interesting analogy.
Think about it. In a physical autoimmune disease, the body's defense mechanisms become hyperactive and start attacking normal, healthy tissue, treating it as a threat.
Right.
Here, the spiritual operating system is running such an aggressive 24/7 antivirus scan that it begins to view basic human comforts or minor selfish desires or natural doubts as spiritual malware.
If the inner court detects a flaw, it immediately quarantines it.
Exactly. It imprisoned the thought. The user is never allowed a single moment of psychological rest.
That analogy really captures the exhaustion inherent in the system. And the reason this internal response has to be so severe is because of the fragile nature of their external community.
Right, the other celestials.
Yeah. The extreme internal policing is the only way to maintain the utopian environment they're trying to build with each other, because they don't view fellow believers as just a congregation.
No, the text uses incredibly intimate language here. They regard other Chanyuan celestials not only as brothers and sisters, but explicitly as lovers.
They are striving for a state of perfect resonance. The text speaks deeply about the track of life and trusting in the luck that brings people into a relation.
So the expectation is that the entire community operates on the exact same spiritual frequency.
Which perfectly explains the necessity of the inner court.
Yeah, because if your community requires everyone to resonate at a flawless shared frequency, then any internal selfishness or private doubt acts as literal static.
It disrupts the broadcast.
Exactly. You can only leave your physical doors unbolted at night, like their utopia demands, if every single citizen has heavily bolted the doors on their own internal demons.
The harshness of the internal self-imprisonment guarantees the safety of the external collective. You lock yourself up so the community can run free.
But stepping back, we have to ask the ultimate question here. If you are a believer listening to this manifesto, looking at a life of extreme self-trial, balancing multiple world religions alongside modern science, and strictly monitoring your every thought. What is the payoff? Why go through all this earthly discipline?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the drive comes from the final segments of the text.
The afterlife.
Yes. They outline one of the most staggering, highly detailed visions of the afterlife you will ever find in modern spiritual writing. The cosmology they've constructed is vast.
The universe, according to a Chanyuan celestial, is not just some singular, cloudy realm where everyone ends up playing harps, is it?
Not at all.
The text maps out this multi-tiered progression. The heavenly kingdom contains the 1,000-year world, the 10,000-year world, and at the absolute apex, the Elysium world.
And their ultimate destination, the terminal goal for their life, is a very specific sector within that apex. The text refers to it as the celestial island continent of the Elysium world.
This is where the doctrine moves from abstract theology into, like, hyper-specific cosmic real estate.
It really does.
They firmly believe that the guide will grant them an island in this Elysium world, but the scale of it is what completely breaks the brain.
Right, they aren't promised a nice little tropical getaway.
No, the text explicitly states they will be given an island the exact size of the Earth.
Wait, an entire Earth-sized planet just handed over to a single individual soul?
Yes. And the believer is the absolute, undisputed master of this Earth-sized domain. The text promises, I will create my beautiful home according to my interests and likes.
Wow.
It is a canvas of unimaginable scale, handed to you to terraform and design based entirely on your personal aesthetics, your hobbies, your specific version of beauty.
That is the promise of an eternity defined by absolute environmental control.
Yeah.
And the text details exactly how they'll spend that eternity, too. It paints a picture of a life completely devoid of misfortune. They'll just stroll about their Earth-sized domain, enjoying the grace of the greatest creator.
But they aren't entirely isolated, right?
No, there's a whole cosmic social calendar. The text notes that they will invite super celestial beings who inhabit other Earth-sized islands to come visit them.
Okay, intergalactic dinner party.
Exactly. And in turn, they will travel across the Elysium world to visit the domains of their peers.
It's a fascinating projection of utopian leisure. But what this staggering future promise accomplishes in the present day is perhaps its most vital function.
Right, it gives them confidence.
It provides the believer with a psychological shield of absolute invincibility.
Oh, totally.
Because their true essence, their life, is already conceptually tethered to this Earth-sized reward and blended into the soul of the greatest creator, earthly struggles become mathematically irrelevant.
The text actually declares they possess a magnanimous heart and a lofty ideal. Setbacks cannot overwhelm them.
There's one specific line that captures this invulnerability perfectly. It says, "The sky may fall, the earth may cave in, but my spirit will survive eternally. My life will live on forever."
I mean, when your retirement plan involves taking ownership of a private planet in the Elysium world, the systemic failures or political turmoil of 2006 Earth truly do register as minor temporary inconveniences.
The sky falling is just local weather.
Exactly.
And so the text finishes on this almost ecstatic frequency. It commands the reader, "Wish me good luck, admire me, because I am a Chanyuan celestial in Lifechanyuan."
They are so proud.
They see themselves on a sailboat, heading directly toward this customized utopia, and they want the world to recognize the sheer scale of their impending victory.
It really synthesizes everything we have unpacked today. This text manages to take the most mundane, granular rules of human existence, washing your hands, doing your job, valuing science, and weaves them together with a grand theology that absorbs the world's major religions.
Yeah.
It demands brutal internal self-policing, and in exchange, it promises the ultimate individualized cosmic reward.
For you listening, this really is a profound study in how the human mind attempts to organize chaos. Think about the sheer volume of competing information we process.
Right, the demands of science, global religions, social morality.
Plus the internal courtroom of our own conscience. This 2006 text takes all of that chaotic raw material, forces it through an uncompromising internal system, and builds a completely unified architecture for living.
It provides a meticulous answer to how one should live day to day and an unbelievably grand answer to why that life matters.
Which brings us to a final thought I want to leave you all with. Something to mull over on your own that builds on this entire blueprint.
Okay.
Consider the ultimate grand prize described here. An entire Earth-sized island to yourself, designed exactly to your personal interests and likes.
Yeah.
If we look back at the spiritual texts of antiquity, the ultimate goal of the afterlife is almost universally focused on dissolving the ego.
Right, achieving nirvana, joining a unified collective.
Exactly, where the individual I disappears entirely into the divine we. But this manifesto promises the exact opposite. It promises the ultimate, hyper-individualized utopia. You don't dissolve your ego, you're rewarded with a planet-sized playground explicitly catered to it.
It frames eternity not as a release from the self, but as the ultimate curation of the self.
So the question we have to ask is, what does it say about our modern desires that the ultimate vision of heaven has evolved away from communal ego death and toward having an infinitely massive space designed exactly to our own personal isolated tastes?
That is a deeply revealing question about what we truly value today.
Have we taken the blueprint of the human soul and simply drawn an impenetrable, customized planet around it? It certainly makes you examine the blueprints you are using to build your own meaning. Thank you for exploring these sources with us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep questioning the blueprints.